One of the things that I'm steering towards is that there's this old chestnut of like America was good for Jews but bad for Judaism, which is to say the more the assimilation that was made possible for American Jews in America was very good for Jews as individuals. All of the attainments that we were able to achieve in every piece of industry, socioeconomic, political mobility, the fluidity of boundaries, the breakdown of the kind of structural anti-Semitism that exists in other places that Jews lived. But there's an open question that we could continue to debate about whether it was ultimately good for Judaism itself, for the flourishing of Judaism. And the flip side of that is, okay, well, there are only two ways to kind of continue to preserve Jewish particularistic thriving. One is to bring back just enough anti-Semitism that it's not dangerous, but where Jews are reminded of what it means to be Jewish. That's choice one. I would say that is what we might call a slippery slope.
Yeah.
Right? Just enough anti-Semitism. The second option is to bring back just enough Jewish weirdness. Like, are Jews willing to be countercultural and weird in readopting Jewish religious and cultural habits and practices that are not the Protestant versions of Jewishness? Because it's only by doing that that we will be able to kind of really create Jewish continuity. I guess I'll start with you, Frank. Where are you on that?
I'll take door number 2, Bob. No, I think that, first of all, anti-Semitism has emerged.
Yeah.
And
good news, bad news, right?
Right. No, it has emerged, yeah. And I think we can't deny that it is a looming presence in American life, that it is something that hit us across the face in a way that I think will have profound implications for our community. Those implications will be both good and bad. I think that there's incredible sense of identification that didn't exist before October 7th, that is real and that could be harnessed in incredibly productive sorts of ways. I think that I don't dismiss that one of the sublime things about being a Jew is that you exist within the context of this extremely contingent sense of existence, where your peoplehood is a very fragile thing, and the fact that it manages to persist despite history is actually something that is sublime and overpowering, and to be reminded of that contingency, I don't think is necessarily a bad source of identification. I think that, and it's ultimately going to be connected to the second thing that you're describing, is that sense of contingency, I think actually does steer people and make people feel countercultural. Right, that I think that actually opens up spaces for the type of countercultural weirdness. Your term, not mine, is something that I think could actually take root in this sort of environment.
I mean, I definitely option 2, obviously, but I think being honest, I think the only way to get to option 2 is for some of option 1. I think we have to kind of be forced into it, and I'll tell you, I'm seeing this a lot on college campuses. Having spoken at like 25 campus Hillels since October 7th, what I am seeing is Jewish students being Jews. I mean, they're the only students on campus who really have to think. No one cares about their feelings, so they can't just throw a tantrum. They actually have to, muster up some facts. Their stories are always decentered. They're told, like, you're an oppressor, we're going to decenter you. So they spend a lot of time listening to other people's stories, and they're really, they're learning the Jewish lesson that the majority, and particularly the mob, is often wrong. It's an important lesson. Ahad Ha'am, famous Zionist, the whole idea of like the blood libel taught Jews that sometimes the majority is wrong, that everyone can be wrong and the Jews can be right. And seeing this on campus when these kids are getting kicked out of every progressive campus club because they have a no Zionist allowed policy, what I tell them is, I'm like, start your own climate change club and make it open to everyone of every background, every belief. You make it radically welcoming, radically inclusive, and then build the best climate club you can. And this is what we've done in this country, right? This is what we did with law firms and hospitals back in my parents' day. And I do wonder if that little bit of option 1 that is happening now it is leading to this weirdness. And what I want is I want Jews to know the awesome weirdness that we have. Like, most Jews do not know that there is Jewish wisdom about any of the issues that we're thinking about today. They have no idea. Because again, if your Judaism is 3 bad holidays and 1 good one, how would you know?
Yeah.
Right? How would you know?
Yeah, it's the problem that we have, though, is that the off-ramps are so powerful. And the off-ramps are either, I'm being pushed out, I'm therefore going to adapt my politics to accommodate themselves to the mob. That's one choice. And the other is not, I'm going to try to retain my commitment to my liberal values that have carried me until now, but I'm going to reject those liberal values entirely. I mean, that's where I want us to land, is in a recommitment to the very principles of a liberal Judaism that was rooted in the value of human dignity and autonomy and freedom that we built a whole Judaism around in this country, and by the same token that we want to advocate for in Israel, a liberal Zionist position that has no plausibility structure currently in Israeli politics, but still might be the best version of a current Zionism out there. How do we go about cultivating that sensibility when the off-ramps are so powerful?
Well, I think we also need to consider the context that we are stepping into a post-liberal America, that it was easy for Jews to celebrate liberalism when liberalism was the political norm, and maybe the weirdness now and the countercultural thing is actually to promote liberal values. And that, I think about where we're going in this spiral that we're in, and one of the dangers in this spiral is that Jews look for protection from the strong man, from the person who stands up and says, I am your protector. I will fend off these people. And it's such an attractive option to feel like you have that on your side. But I think the danger is that in the history of the world, that type of liberalism is actually the only thing that has demonstrably allowed for Jewish thriving. And the golden age was the golden age because there was this political context. And so if Jews a generation ago were able to look at America and say, this is what it means to be an exceptional nation, we were able to identify certain values and to read America back to itself in a very profound sort of way that actually changed America's own sense of self-conception. I feel like it's kind of incumbent upon Jews to re-engage in that project at this moment where liberalism feels like it's slipping away on both sides. I think it's incumbent to say, this is America's best self, and it grows from something that we know from our own history and from our own canonical text that this is a way forward.
What worries me about as I see rising illiberalism in our politics, I see the appeal for a lot of people of an illiberal kind of Judaism, the very angry, everyone's out to get us, we are just going to take what we can get, and who cares about everyone else, it's just about us. So I see that, and that option, I get the appeal of it. It's strong, it has a very strong, clear message. And if on the other side, the option is kind of a watery, social justice is good with no particular substance, I worry that, that illiberal Jewish message is quite powerful. So I think my answer is we need a liberal Judaism that actually has substance, that has radical, countercultural, powerful wisdom for how we live today that will make people think actually there's something worth engaging here.
Yeah, which also, by the way, requires a continued focus also on what it means to be a critic of our own people at the same time. The external threats are easy to notice, and it requires also us to push back against the internal issues as well. What were you going to say, Frank?
I feel like we're almost 75% of the way there. When you listen to the way that Jews tend to position themselves in American political discourse, there are a couple things that we fall back on as expressions of our core beliefs. We want to believe in free speech because I think we know from the 20th century going back to the post-Cold War era is that the protection of minority rights and dissident rights is something that it's good for us as well as it's good for the nation. I think certain ideas about meritocracy we want to believe in as expressions of a type of liberalism, and I think the challenge, I think, is not to engage in that type of liberalism selectively, because you land on places where you sound so fervent about your values, and then there are instances of hypocrisy that creep up on you. And I'm afraid that the rest of the world can see those moments of hypocrisy, and it's not attractive.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the best way for liberal Judaism and liberal Zionism to win is for it to be as passionate about its commitments as the illiberal causes that are rising on both ends. Let me ask you the final question, which is a very American question, which is, we started with diagnoses of things that aren't working, both the longer arc history of Jews in America, the more recent episodes. Both of you have focused a lot of your attention on campus as a site of some of your concerns, but give me one thing that makes you optimistic about the possibility that we as American Jews are going to be able to get past this point. It can be a vision, an image, a story, something that makes you feel optimistic.
Well, I will just pause for a moment on campus, where I went to Columbia. I've written a lot about Columbia. And I do feel like as I've gone to campus and I've met with Columbia students and students who have been on the front lines of things that I would describe as objectively anti-Semitic, I have seen that they become more accustomed to engaging in the type of open, courageous argumentation that I think a lot of us would benefit from. That it feels like one of the tendencies that we'll have in a moment where we feel under threat is to hunker down. Which again can be a very productive tendency in a lot of ways, but this retreat from the world, to retreat from the political arena, and to see kids get trained in the actual work of politics, which is sitting in a room with people who may not like you, and you may not like them, and actually having a passionate argument with them where you don't walk away.
I have this fantasy where we could go back to Europe in the early 1800s, and with our modern with the sensibility of Jewish pride and joy and curiosity, we could actually kind of reinvent Judaism from there. We could kind of bring Judaism into modernity without the Protestant cookie cutter, without the real profound hatred of most of our fellow citizens. And I kind of wonder what kind of Judaism would arise. And I feel optimistic because I see a lot of people today doing that project. Mm-hmm. I see them at Hartman, at Hadar, at Svara, really mining the depths of our tradition to take our wisdom and bring it to the Jewish public. And I think that makes me very, very optimistic.
Yeah, we can do that project without a time machine. So
Exactly.
I want to thank you to Frank Foer, to Sarah Hurwitz. Thank you for being here tonight.